What's happening, everyone? Welcome to the Whiskey Shed. My name is John McGrath and this is my shed where I drink whiskey, hence the name. And it is a rainy, stormy night tonight, so without further ado, let's jump in and look at this whiskey. It's quite stormy out, but tonight we're going to be looking at some Powers Gold Label. So, a few little facts and a little bit of history on Powers. I always like to give a little bit of history on the bottles that we're going to taste. So, Powers was established in 1791 by James Power. He set up a little distillery on his premises. He was an innkeeper in Dublin on Thomas Street. So he was producing about 6,000 gallons of whiskey a year there at that distillery. And the company was James Power and Sons. Now later they moved to John's Lane, which was just over the road. And they set up an even bigger distillery. I think by 1823, early 1820s, they were producing about 160,000 gallons a year. That later grew to 300,000 gallons a year, and they were then trading under the name of John Power and Son. So they became one of Ireland's biggest whiskey producers. They had the biggest pot still in the world at the time. That pot still can now be seen in the Middleton Distillery in Cork. It's on display outside as you enter into the Middleton Distillery. It's outside. You'll see it there. I'll roll in a picture there now. You can have a look. But yeah, they were, like I say, one of the biggest producers of whiskey in Ireland. And they were the very first Irish distillers to bottle their own whiskey. So in 1886, I believe, if my dates aren't too wrong, they bottled the first bottle of Powers Gold Label. The rest of the distillers in Ireland, and as was typical at the time, were producing distillate for bonders and merchants. And some of the merchants were a little bit underhanded and were watering down the whiskey, and Powers were having none of that, so they were going to bottle and guarantee that their whiskey was good whiskey in their bottle. And you had Powers Gold Label. And the gold label on the bottle was actually produced using brass powder. So they spent a bit of time and quality on the label itself, and you could be guaranteed what was in the bottle was actually good quality whiskey too. At the time, it was a single pot still whiskey, or as it was known, pure pot still whiskey. Powers Gold Label today is a 70% single pot still whiskey with a 30% grain whiskey. So it's a blended whiskey, no longer a single pot still whiskey, but it's still pretty nice. This is now their budget line. So that's a little bit of history on it. Let's give a few more stories about the whiskey. So moving up to the modern era, Powers is the #1 selling whiskey in Ireland. It has been for a long time, forever, for as long as I can remember, and it still is to this day, I believe. Somewhere in the region of 2.5 million bottles of Powers get sold in Ireland every year, if my research is not wrong. So if you guys are wondering what it is that the Irish people are drinking, it's Powers and a lot of it. Now, I can remember from doing bar work, I started working in pubs and bars when I was 13 years old, believe it or not, back when you could do such things. I was a bottle boy collecting bottles in my local rugby club. I then went on to do bar work for the next 7 years. So up until the time I was 20, even during my apprenticeship as an electrician, I was still doing bar work. I quite enjoyed it, and Powers was the #1 whiskey that everybody asked for. Now, they've repackaged it, done the bottle, relabel it. They want to kind of freshen it up. It kind of had the reputation of being an old man's whiskey, but old men tend to be wise, and there was a reason all the old guys were drinking that whiskey. So whenever I was working in a bar, someone would come up and they would ask a pint and a half one. Now, a pint always meant a pint of Guinness, nothing else, and a half one was always a drop of Powers. That's what they always used to have. And the Powers Gold Label seemed to be their favourite, so I mean, they can't actually be wrong. So if you go to a pub in Ireland and you ask for a pint and the barman asks you a pint of what, you're probably in a tourist bar, or the barman is fairly new. So when someone asks for a pint, it's a pint of Guinness, and a drop was always a drop of Powers, and that's how they like to have their drink. And yeah, like I say, it was their favourite. Did get a bit of a reputation as an old man's drink, so they are refreshing the line now. They've changed the bottle now to represent the pot still, so that's what the shape changed, and they've changed the label to the Powers Diamond with the P. Now, an interesting fact about that diamond and P, that is one of the very first trademarks to be ever registered in Ireland. And it's nice that they are gone back to their roots to go forward. So new bottle, but the old emblem is on the bottle now. I actually think it's quite nice, and it does kind of modernise it, and it does kind of, the fact that Irish whiskey is really taken off and it's really exploding around the world. Powers want to be right there with that explosion, I suppose, and they want to get away from the old man label. But like I say, those old men were pretty wise, and there was a reason they were drinking this whiskey. So without further ado, let's get it open and let's get it tasted. I'm going to spend 10 minutes now fiddling with this bottle. I'll speed up this bit. Okay, there we go. I got the top off. That took about 10 minutes, and always have a knife with you is the moral of the story. So let's get some of this in the bottle. Okay, now that it's in the glass, we'll do a bit of nosing and tasting. I should give you a little few facts about it. Again, it's a blended whiskey, so it's 70% pot still, like I've said, and then it's 30% grain whiskey, column still grain whiskey. It's bottled at 40% ABV, and it is a non-chill filtered whiskey, which is kind of unusual. I always thought that it had to be 46% minimum before you could not chill filter it. So chill filtering is done to stop the whiskey turning cloudy when you put a drop of water or when you put some ice in it. It can go cloudy. I think the fatty acids in the whiskey can become unsoluble, whatever the chemical or scientific term for that is, I'm not quite sure. But chill filtering basically takes those fatty acids out, I believe, if I'm not too much mistaken, so that when you put ice in your whiskey, it doesn't turn all white and cloudy. But this is non-chill filtered, so that's all still in it. So let's have a little nose and see what we get. So it's nice, a light whiskey. Now, bearing in mind this is a budget whiskey. This cost me 22 euros, but it's nice and light on the nose. It's honey and lemon. Yeah, definitely honey and lemon. A little bit of cinnamon in there. You're not getting too many of the bacon spices. It's nice and light. There's literally, I can't get any of the ethanol, so none of that is hitting me in the nose. Let's let it sit on the edge of the glass and see if we can get some more. Even a little hint of cloves in there. So you can see why the old guys really like this whiskey. It was the working man's whiskey, and I have to say, for a budget Irish whiskey, this is the one I would recommend. Again, at 22 euros, I think this beats Jameson hands down. Now, that's just my subjective opinion. Don't take that to the bank. Try it yourself and see what you think. But yeah, it's honey, lemon, a little bit of cinnamon. There's even some cloves in there is what I'm getting. So on the palate. Very interesting. It's interesting. There's a good bit going on in the palate for being such a light and I suppose budget whiskey. Straight away you get lemon and honey. That's the first two things, and then it turns into white pepper and cloves, and it has a long taste to it. It has legs, or what the term is, I'm not sure. The finish, that's what I'm looking for. So it has a good finish. It has kind of pepper, cloves, almost like a minty hint to it. It's definitely mint on the back of the tongue I'm getting now. It's still continuing to change. So you can see why the owl fella's quite like this, and why my grandfather quite like a drop of powers. And yeah, for me, for a 22 euro bottle of whiskey, I think this is one of the best value whiskies on the market for what you get. It's nice and light. It has that classic pot still kind of spicy pepperiness to it. With the blended whiskey, I do think they colour it. I'm not too sure. It has a dark enough colour to it, so I'm not sure whether they colour it or not. But like I say, as a kind of budget whiskey, this is really, really good, and it comes highly recommended from me. So yeah, still on the nose. It's nice and light, but it's lemon and honey, so it's perfect for the stormy night that's in it. A nice lemon honey with some cloves and some cinnamon in there. One more drop on the palate. Again, very light. There's not a big kick of the alcohol. Obviously, it's 40% ABV, but it's lemon, honey, cloves, mint, and pepper. That's what you get from this. And it lingers. It has some staying power, which is unusual for a budget whiskey, I have to say, and it has a bit of complexity, which is also, as far as I've seen in my limited experience, is pretty unusual for a budget whiskey. So I can really see why people love the powers and why it is Ireland's biggest selling whiskey. So what we'll do now is we'll let our 2 a glass sit. I'll just let that open up for a bit and see if it changes and see if we get anything else out of it. So we'll leave it sit in the glass for a few minutes and see what happens. Okay, we've let the air at the whiskey for a little while there, and we'll see if anything changed. Not too much. Like I say, it's still all lemon and honey all day long. So maybe the cloves have strengthened a small bit, but I wouldn't say it has changed too much. Usually when you leave a whiskey sit and open up, it can change and all the kind of flavours kind of integrate. And like sometimes with the pot still whiskies, like the Redbreast and the Green Spot and stuff, the bacon spices really come to the fore, so you get some cinnamon and nutmeg and all that lovely stuff. But not so much of this, still the same, I think. Still that lovely lemon and honey kind of notes with some cloves, possibly a little bit of cinnamon. Not really getting any of the baking spices with this one at all, even though it is like a majority pot still whiskey. So on the palate, a lot more peppery now. So the pepper is now to the forefront. The lemon and honey has died down a little bit. It's a big kick of pepper. Now into cloves. And even a little hint of that mintiness. So it's quite nice, it's light, there's no big kick of the alcohol. Again, it's only 40 ABV, but it's a €22 bottle of whiskey. That's what I bought for this in one of the biggest, in the big supermarket chains. That's where I got this today, and for €22. In my book, that's the best value Irish whiskey on the market. If you want to try some Irish whiskey, if Jameson is your go-to whiskey in the budget line of the Irish whiskies, definitely look at Powers Gold Label. I think bang for buck, this is the best on the market. That's a good whiskey and it's €22. And you can go into any bar up and down the length and breadth of Ireland, you will find Powers Gold Label, and you can always ask for a drop of it and try it there. So, sum it up, lemon and honey, pepper, cloves and some mint, and yeah, plenty of bang for your buck. So there we go, guys. That has been Powers Gold Label in our new bottle. I have to say I quite like the new bottle. Again, reminiscent of the pot still. That's what they kind of modelled it on, and are using their original diamond and pea shape. So like they say, it is a new bottle, but the same Powers. And we're going to finish on a little toast like we always do. And you guys better start giving me some toasts in the comments, because I'm going to run out of these, like I say, very, very quick. So here's another Irish one for you, and it's a fun one again. So here's to cheating, stealing, fighting and drinking. For if you cheat, may you cheat death. If you steal, may it be your lover's heart. If you fight, may it be for a friend. And if you drink, may it be with me. Sláinte, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Yeah. Lemon, honey and pepper. Oh, and I have some 12-year-old John's Lane to go next, so this is coming up next.